asking you to do.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Larry Bjork, Chairman of the committee. And we probably should go around the room. I know we've got a new vice chair and a couple of board members here. So Tracy, you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Tracy. I'm the supervisor for the ADRC here in Dunn. I also supervise APS, or adult protection services.
My name is Austin, I'm the transit chair. Over in the building next to that. I'm Luke Wilsey, I'm on the county board and I represent District 8. I'm now the vice chair. Thank you.
Sharing on the staff. And, oh, go ahead.
Charlotte Lake from Montgomery. Leanne Bartz, he worked for home care before they closed for 25+ years. Retired now.
Andrew Hagan, I am county board supervisor for District 22. Gary Steen, county board supervisor for District 5, vice chair of the company.
I'm Larry Bjork, District 26, which is the south part of downtown in the town of Springbrook. And seeing that I'm chair, I can finish the story. I missed last meeting because I was getting hate cut, but the time before that, I was telling you about the old cow blue, 16 years old, and about how she mourned the death of her cat. And it was even hard to talk about. Well, update of the Boo story is that you can say Boo died of a broken heart, because a month later, she just died. But what I want you to remember, and it's absolutely true, is that Boo had a daughter called Hope. And neighbors raised Boo as a baby calf, his name and so on. We had this cat called Hope, that was cat. So the next morning after Boo died, I went out to check cows, and what do you know? Hope had a baby cat, little red gold cat. So that's some of the things in farm. I would just get punched in the nose and then good things happen. Okay. That's
Krista, do we have anyone joining us remotely?
I just got a message that Carol Katinger is trying to get into the meeting, but I haven't gotten any notifications, so.
So someone may be joining us.
Nobody else has joined.
Okay.
And just a reminder, if everybody could speak up, because we don't have a mic. And then those that are sitting opposite from Tracy, if you want to be in the view of the video, you might want to fill in the seats. Yep, those seats.
I don't see anybody making a big rush to join be on the video, Krista. So I think
That is fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Krista. Okay, well, our meeting has been called to order. This is the Dunn County Aging and Disability Resource Advisory for Transportation and Transportation. We have the minutes that are placed with you from the meeting on Monday, September 19th. Is there any discussion or a motion actually to approve the minutes? Mr. Hagan? Sherry? First, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Good. Well, now we have public comment, and here I'll let one of our regulars. What do you need?
Maria
Maria.
Bukowski.
Maria,
Yeah.
just so you know, there's our new vice chair.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So otherwise, I think you probably know everybody else.
I do.
Good, thank you. Missed the story about who was the cow. But people will do it again.
Charles will catch me up.
Okay, doing public comment, if anybody else has some wild and crazy stories like to share. Doesn't look like, okay,
Krista, no public comment.
No,
Fine.
I didn't receive any.
Thank you.
thank you again. Item number 5, the upcoming meeting date, January 23rd. And we'll also be meeting with the nutrition advisory, January then also. And, if you were outside on this past Saturday in that cold wind, it had to be a January. It couldn't be anything other than a darn old January day, but it's just cold. So we're gonna hope for a nice day on January 23rd.
Make up for it.
That's right. Staff report. Tracy, do you have stuff on that?
Yeah, just first, I just wanted to say, myself, Ann, and Martin Hageman attended, shortly after our last meeting, I think it was on September 20th, actually, we attended an ADRC, training in Chippewa. It was in Lake County at the Eagles Club, but it was put on by the ADRC in Chippewa and Eau Claire County, and they invited all the regional, ADRCs to go and bring any interested board members. And I really thought it was a wonderful training, lots of good information on how to advocate with state senators and legislators in terms of, things that are important to you as a citizen. Leanne, would you agree? I thought it was a really, it was a really good training. So, yeah. So
Seems like so long ago, but.
Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago, but I certainly thank Leanne and Martin who could be here today, for attending, and then, if I get other opportunities like that in the future, I'll share them with the group. One of our 3-year goals for the ADRC was to try to provide more, training and information on advocacy for our board members, so that really was something helpful.
Okay. Again, I'll just, before we do the introduction, right, I have a question on, the ADRC, we're getting more inquiries, senior citizens, as far as, the supplementals, you know, the telephone breaks all the time, okay, and it's on the TV as far as, you know, the dental stuff. Is that where people call if they have a question on, where to go for? Instead of dealing with somebody on the telephone, people call ADRC and says, you know, I'm interested, I've got a supplemental, but I'm interested in the dental part, whatever that is.
Yeah, Larry, we would like you to direct folks to call us. We actually have a specialist. She's called the Elder Benefits Specialist, her name is Bethany Schneider, and her whole job is helping people who are age 60 and older, with their Medicare supplement plans and other insurance questions that they have. So she has very extensive training in that area, and I feel like she's probably, in terms of DHS or county employees, probably the very best person for folks to go. But the best way to reach her is just to call the ADRC office. Right now, she's incredibly busy because of that Medicare open enrollment time. So Denise actually made all of the appointments for her so that she doesn't have to be returning calls and using her to make appointments, because her schedule is pretty much just booked up with people who have questions about Medicare open enrollment right now.
And that, she just helped us.
Oh, good. She's wonderful. Yes, she is very, very knowledgeable and highly. Again, I had somebody call me today and was asking me questions, and I'm like, I can fumble through an answer, but let me get you to the person who really knows, and that's that. So, yeah, we're very. I mean, each county has that position, elder benefit specialist. I feel really, really blessed that we have her because she knows the job so well, and she's so wonderful to work with.
Well, as before, you know, as one of the functions of this committee is to, you know, be the voice of the community, and people are visiting with, or, you know, with the senior centers, that, you know how to direct people. Because, I'm telling you, just folk, I had no idea what, you know, I'd say, you got a question about Gary, what I use.
Now you can switch it and say call ADRC.
Okay, Luke is under, vice chairman over here, so I think the new members, when they're board members.
Heather Jerry.
Heather,
Suzanne Gaines.
Suzanne.
Right?
So. Yeah,
Tracy, I got a question here. And I see those ads on TV all the time. Maybe somebody here can help out, but if you notice on all those ads on TV, you get down there in small letters that you can't read. They're not connected with any government entity. And so what I found out is like, gee, do I want dental? Do I want vision? Well, you bet I do. But what I found out that I take a lot of drugs, my wife takes a lot of drugs, so we don't qualify for any of that stuff because of our situation. No, I reckon if you were 100% healthy, maybe you could get it.
With Bethany, we were able to email her all of our drugs, and then she was able to go through it and recommend which plans would be the best for her.
She did that really a few years ago. Excellent, a great help, and of course, a regular person like us, you know, it's hard to, yeah, you know, and they just keep hammering that stuff. And they call you about it 5 minutes for Christ's sake, you know. But anyway, yes, I'm very helpful. She helped my wife and I. And you know what? You ever have an outreach where she talks to groups or anything?
She does, but not during open enrollment
Well,
time.
yeah.
So she, like, for example, during the farmer's market, we had some ADRC for several weeks. And she had some times down there too, where she was there answering people's questions. During open enrollment, her time is so valuable. I mean, if you would look at Bethany's schedule, she has an appointment every half hour. And it's filled up, actually, to be honest, it's probably filled up all the way to the end of open enrollment. So she tries to do all of her outreach outside of that open enrollment time when she has a little bit more availability, just so people get to know her, get to know what services are, know that they should call and schedule early to get in during that open enrollment time. But really, during this period of time, I want her time to be spent working with the actual folks. But yeah, she's gone to the Colfax nutrition site, she's gone to Boyceville, she's gone to a couple library events.
Has she done any of the classes with the senior center?
We have done them as a whole with like an ADRC panel, and she was one of the panelists. And we probably will do that again in the future too. But again, kind of outside of her busiest time, trying to do that outreach so people know who she is, and then kind of know the rest. And she does help people. There are insurance questions that actually come up all through the year because people become eligible for Medicare, you know, when they turn 65 on their birthdays, and she's always working with folks. But this is by far the busiest time because people just have questions about if it makes sense for them to switch plans or what the best deal is for them.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
well, that's committee is. Help people with information and where to go. I certainly learn stuff all the time. Okay, anything else, Tracy?
No, I think just next is Austin up on the agenda, so
Okay, yeah,
our visitor from transit today.
All right. I have a PowerPoint. that we'll go through today, just a few highlights. For those of you who don't know the ins and outs of Dunn County Transit, we have a few services around town. One of them is a door-to-door bus service, and that's what this 8521 through Human Services grant is all about. Is the doorstep bus service, but all handicap accessible buses with lifts, door-to-door service with a 2-hour notice, take you to your appointment, take you to the grocery store, bring you home. Yep, yes. Wherever you want to go. And now that the C3 center is out of town, we still take people there. It is $5, not true, but with it being out of town, but we do what we can to help people out with kind of those specific location needs and time frames. The next bus is our 1-hour loop community bus that since June 1st of 2021 is free to the public. So, the route is more condensed than it used to be, still stops at 15 stops every loop. And it can do that whole loop in 1 hour, so it's the same route every hour compared to before. It's switched every other hour, split hard to follow, cut off a couple stops. Technically, only the judicial center is what we cut off. And then because we have 13 riders in the year, stop. So cut that off, and that is now free to the public. And you can get from, let's just say, the Mayo Clinic bus stop that a lot of people use, and you can be to Walmart in 12 minutes for free. So even some of our elderly riders, and accessible riders, that used to use the doorstop bus and pay $3 each way to go to the groceries, they take the free convenience bus there, and then they take the doorstop bus back, or they take both. And that helps us save capacity on our doorstop bus, which gets pretty busy. And sometimes we have to say no because they're too busy. But somebody can take the community bus based on where they live and wait times and stuff. I absolutely recommend it. Because it's a savings for them, and helps us help out more people. Then the university.
Is that 7 days a week or
5,
5?
and Saturday mornings 3 loops. So
Okay.
9 o'clock to 12 p.m. loop Saturday morning.
Okay.
Then 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. And then normally during winter break, for the university, and then summer break, we don't run Saturdays, but we might. Then we just have a university route that's 3 stops around campus. That we have the university subsidy for. And 7:17 a.m. to 9:09 night for running that. Okay, the agenda today, just talking about ridership of the last 3 months since our last meeting. Our grants, the electric bus update, his staffing, around the shop, and then ridership, the doorstop and Red Cedar ridership increased from 535 in September, just down a few to 523 in October. The community route ridership increased from 795 in September to 966 in October. This used to be a route that would give 0 to 3 riders a day some days, when the university was out of school, and now it's getting 50 to 75 riders some days. So, and then the Stout ridership is back to pre-COVID numbers, and 12,896 in September and 13,362 in October. So that's good to see. And then
How do you track the riders? Do they have a scan?
nope, so there's a tablet, so iPad in every bus. And when every rider gets on the bus, it tracks that spot, that location, that time. And then, so it used to be paper tally until last year. And it was 40 hours of work every quarter to plug those into the computer. We were already paying for the software. So it tracks that, it tracks down to the 10th of a mile, all that. So very accurate, and it's great to see. Looking up to the numbers here. Sorry, that other computer still has that up there. That's not up that, is it? You can just minimize that. There we go.
I've got it. Next.
Okay, so
There we go. All right.
just looking back to previous years, and the Gold Star up in August, that was our best year ever on the community route. Doorstop ridership and Red Cedar ridership compared to previous years are back right into the swing of things. We track Red Cedar ridership a little bit differently, where lunch hour goes to Red Cedar, not doorstop, so that's kind of the difference in the dip and the increase. So, but it's good to see that we're kind of back to the normal swing of things. Okay, and then Stout here as well. 2 gold stars, showing the last 2 months are the best months ever. Since we started tracking rides back in 2015. Grant timeline, we have a solar grant for the solar field. That's extended to 9/30/2023. I'm in contact with Olson Solar Energy out of Eau Claire, that's who did the middle school in town. And then we are reaching out to 2 other companies to get requests for proposals. Commute to Careers Grant was something you might be familiar with, some of you. That grant is no more. That's with what happened during COVID and everything, it's just something that got expired. But with how our community route runs now compared to how it used to run, it goes to 90% of that without having to add routes and drivers and pay. So that's great to see. City of Menominee was approved a couple weeks ago. And then the state 5311 grant, that's what pays for most of our operation that will be coming due here in a few weeks. 85.1 in the services takes care of, and we just get them the numbers that we need. And then UW Stout was taking care of those results. Electric bus updates. We have a 60 kilowatt charger that was delivered and installed. The electric bus's current timeline for the repair of them is, I'm leaning more towards January to February of this next year. And the 30 kilowatt charger arrived, and not last week, a few weeks ago now, at the end of October.
That's the electric buses, you're hoping to see them, they're delivered at
I hope.
December or June.
I'm just the messenger.
Uh,
So I've said the date a few different times now. It was supposed to be the beginning of 20. So the latest information we have is first quarter of 2022. So hopeful that that's the case. So we can test them out and see how they work in the cold compared to warm weather. So see how many miles we can get in charge. We have 9 drivers at Dunn County Transit. One thing that's new in the past few months is non-CDL drivers. We bought a bus this last August. That was a 14-passenger bus with staffing issues that we had. That 4 out of our 5 routes being driven with a non-CDL driver, with only having 1 to 5 people on the bus at a time. So that's been a good thing. A little bit of savings in payroll, easier for new job applicants to come into the market. And it was just voted on last week. All of the Dunn County Transit employees which have been employed via staffing agency are now going to be county employees starting January 1st. County benefits to the full-time employees that want them. This will be very good in everybody's side. Like we said, we met with solar company Olson Energies out of Eau Claire and reaching out to 2 others. The light, all of the bus stop, all of the bus shelters. This is new verbiage that our Stout representatives came up with, and these are vinyl graphics that are going to be in every bus. How do I ride? Where do I ride? When do I ride? And this will be in all of the shelters. No matter if you need the Stout route, the doorstop bus, or the community bus. Schedule. And the last thing, once every 5 years, you get picked on how you're doing compared to the other counties that are relative in size to us, and then also other counties and other states that are relative to our size. How we compare to operating expenses per trip, revenue hours, and the few red ones that we have here. This is back from 2020. A lot of routes that are on the new system track our hours versus on duty hours a lot better. So with our new data that comes in for 2021, that will work with them here in a few weeks. It should look very good. But for the most part, this is the best in the state, for cost per run.
What would you suggest in terms of plans for the rural area? We have some of these figures in the rural area that they have no way to get to their head-on rides from the.
Absolutely. Before my time here, when Kent Conklin was the transit manager, I mean, you know him. When he was transit manager, we went to Boysville, to Colfax sometimes, and we went to Clara. And, you know, with the lack of ridership, I think we had it for a little while, and it's kind of like stop. But when we can, when we are able to, I tell our dispatchers to allow further outside of town with this schedule. Closer to them, closer to, you know, further out on 29. Out past Cedar Falls. No, as long as we're not denying rides. The volunteer driver service is the next best option. Right now, it's not the easiest because we have one volunteer driver. And they have limited availability. They're selective on the rides that we pay. But that is a service that's economical for the rider that goes wherever the rider needs. The Minneapolis being the trips in Eau Claire to me. And it's a volunteer driver paid service. Tracy can talk to me a little bit more about that, but that is an option. If we can get a few more volunteer drivers, that would be the best thing. Right now, it's hard to want to expand with. Just doesn't seem like there was a time when our fuel budgets double of what we budgeted for this year. Stuff like that. But, baby steps in pushing out into the new areas when we can. What we're trying to do.
Austin, I got a couple of questions. Number one.
February 2nd, 21. Almost 2 weeks.
Good. Glad you're on board. I got a question about the cost of solar buses. I don't know if there's been a discussion before or not, but I mean, you know, there's got to be an upcharge for solar buses compared to traditional buses. And how was that money? Where did it come from?
So that was for a Wisconsin no emissions grant. That this was way before my time. This was started to be applied for, paperwork done in 2018. And with a normal sourcing a normal bus through is gasoline and diesel bus. I haven't had to buy one yet. We've had such a nice fleet, the new fleet. But I think it's closer to 60-40 for what Dunn County has to pay for their local share. Well, these electric buses are 80-20 and 90. So the buses are, I think, around 160,000 apiece, but our local share is 40. So it equals out to the same as local match.
And you mentioned Wisconsin grants, that's a Wisconsin grant on federal money.
Yeah, it's a Wisconsin grant through
FTA is,
the Federal Transportation.
and your installation of solar at the site. How's the funding on that?
That's a different grant. That was just a flat 160,000. There's not much paperwork at the office on that grant other than Wisconsin DOT gave us the go ahead flat $150,000 grant around a 75 kilowatt charging system of a solar field.
And does that solar field then, service the buildings, or is that gonna be, you said there was a source of energy for the solar buses?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not an electrician.
Yeah.
But it's going to hopefully get us to a net zero at the transit building between charging the buses and the electricity. The way that they tie the electrical in, I think, even though they're separate service units, it all still comes from one account. And anything after that would be sold back. That's
One, and then the last thing is, when this gets up and running, I would hope that you would report to us on, how well or not well, solar buses operate cold weather, as far as, you know, your time frame when you need them to operate.
absolutely. They say 120 miles on a charge or 130. There's no data on that says if that's where the heater running, if that's what the AC running, or what temperature that's at. So it'll be trial and error. And that's one thing when we picked which charging systems we were going to buy. We got one large 60 kilowatt fast charger that if a bus comes into transit during its lunch hour, it hook up and then finish the day. And then the 30 kilowatts in Holden, 6 to 8 hour charger. Yeah, great question.
Where is, okay, then just one point. Where is Dunn County in the area as far as, are we doing the same thing that they've done in Pierce or Eau Claire, Chippewa, or are we gonna be providing information that would be valuable to other counties?
We are some of the first with the small cab over mini buses that are electric. Eau Claire has those diesel electric hybrids, some fully electric, those are full transit buses. These are more of the smaller wheel style transit buses. There's one other company that is getting the same style buses, same size buses, that's up in Big Field, National County, called BART Transportation. And they're still waiting for these buses too. So we'll know more and be able to kind of compare.
Well, Dunn County and Ashland are gonna break the glass ceiling and see how it goes.
Yep. They were a few months ahead of us, when getting the chargers, but their chargers have kind of been installed, but sitting idle. But with theirs, they're actually open to the public. And then they can a little bit of
I'm glad you're the guy taking care of that.
trying. And I'm learning too.
Austin, I could probably give the board a little bit of history on the grant. Eric Turner, who was the director of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation, helped write that grant. That was $300,000, I think, and instrumental for us to move ahead with it. So it's an example of a couple of different areas of the county working together. And I think we've done a good job of being kind of cutting edge, so you know, and for that I'm happy to address your question on rural ridership. When we tried that, I was on the board then, I was also on ADRC board then. When we tried that, it was lack of ridership, so therefore it wasn't economically viable. Now, I don't know if it needs more outreach, you know, to make it.
You can see publicizing and saying shopping day,
Yeah,
meet at the wheeler
I think.
and drive everybody to one spot, then they can take the bus from there.
I think that that's certainly worth exploring, you know, and awareness, you know,
Well,
reality is
I
perception.
live north of Wheeler, and when I didn't, but 9 months when I couldn't drive, and it was so isolating.
Yes, and I could understand that. I mean, without your driver's license, in rural areas like ours, you're out of luck. So I would, urge you guys to look at that, see what the possibilities are, and then do the best you can, and report back. And I think awareness, and I will just say this, like what I said about the outreach that the ADRC gal did there. I think to raise the awareness of what the ADRC does and what's available to the people in the county, I think a lot of people don't know, right? They just don't know what's available, and if we can raise our image, or however we want to say that, and we're in the process of trying to do that, putting out that video that's going to precede our county board meeting. Kind of, you can get on it, it'll tell you what's happening, where we're going, and so we're trying to get with it, so to speak, and move things along. So I'm encouraged by that, and of course, it's way beyond my technical skills. I'm a light switch guy. So I'm hopeful. Yes, awesome.
I like that idea, maybe one day a week to one city. That's kind of a specific thing. And I can get the reads on my own time in this. But I think
Be publicized to the churches in the area.
Right.
Volunteer there to get people to work in the town and then transport them.
The outreach that we've had to like the nutrition sites are great. But I know in my own community there, I'm old enough to go, my wife's old enough to go, I got 3 or 4 brother-in-laws, they don't go. So you don't always reach everybody when you go to the nutrition sites, because there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't take advantage of it. And our local paper, Colfax Messenger, Leanne Ralph, is a very good reporter. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk to Chris Corporal, our county manager, and see if Leanne would like to do an individual article on the ADRs, transportation and nutrition, that type of thing, to raise awareness and Google PR.
Love it, hearing.
I am using the nominee net on Facebook to find out what's going on in the nominee bill. I'm sure they would be happy to take on more news.
Good discussion, I mean, a lot of information, I mean, that's why we're here.
Have you done
with-
surveys?
So, I was just wondering if he's done, or
But just a quick question, have you done surveys of what might be driving, like so to speak, driving the increase in ridership or participation rates? I mean, it sure seems that price of gas, I mean, that there seems to be some obvious reasons why what might be driving the increase, but helpful to have feedback too.
Absolutely. We haven't done a survey, just feedback from individual riders. But the biggest thing, I think, was simplicity of the schedule that came out about 1.5 years ago, and then time for it to let it be understood. So we added a couple other stops like Dick's Fresh Market, and then brochures in every bus stop. There's been bus stops at a lot of these locations for a decade, but nobody knew there were bus stops because there wasn't a bus shelter. So brochures, bus shelters, verbiage. We worked a little harder on Facebook, pushing that route when it first came out.
Do you have brochure for the senior center or the recreation department?
Probably not.
So that would
That's a
be
good
a
point.
place to put on. People look good.
Yeah, we're there every day.
Right.
Austin, I would just say too that this is my own comment. The dependability of your routes, where the pickups are, and the dependability, because I know my wife and I, between the two of us, we forget most everything. So we got to write it down, and so that's very important, because it gets to be a habit. You know it's going to be there. You can depend on it. That will help build your ridership, because maybe somebody's having coffee and he doesn't know about it, but I'm telling him about it. Or, word of mouth and that type of thing kind of grows it. Exactly. Now that's easy for me to say. You got to figure it out.
It's such a tight route, the bus is within a minute or two of each stop that it needs to. Unless inclement weather or some other unforeseen, but they need to be on their game. So the doorstop bus, that's a span of 10 minutes, you know. So we always just let them know that consistency.
And those drivers, I mean, they like at the doorstep bus pulling up to the senior center. They let somebody out. And many times they're like beelining to the bathroom and shoot right back to the, so they can get out of there and make their schedule.
One more comment on that, shut up. But this lady here is north of Wheeler. I'm in Colfax. I think a lot of times, we forget about our rural areas, you know. And this is great that we got all this in Menominee, but Dunn County is a lot bigger than Menominee. I think whatever outreach we can do for our seniors, because, and then another thing has happened, I know what, in Colfax there, we don't have a clinic anymore. So now there's, you know, you can't go to the clinic, so now you gotta go to Menominee or there, which is a transportation problem. Because my neighbor there, she used to go 2 times a week to 90 years old, but you ain't gonna drive the Uber, tell you that. But, you know.
Well, and that's a whole different question, but the clinics, and we were talking about not having a clinic here anymore, but ours is, what it used to be here in Menominee. You have to go to some little more. Well, but no intern.
Thank God that we're all.
No
honest,
need to
but they don't even deliver. Oh, no, they don't. You gals maybe didn't hear that, we're beyond this, but they don't deliver babies anymore.
Yeah, that's what we were saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, in my estimation.
And I don't fault like mail and like that because the COVID just hits the health industry terribly. And there's a lot of burnout. And that's probably all over every industry.
Great discussion.
Thank you.
Here. Anything else, Austin, or are you ready to go?
Nope, that's all I had. I felt like they took some time.
Oh, you did. Good job, young man.
Good job.
Glad you're there. Okay, Tracy, where are we at now?
We are at just the consideration of the actions to be taken, the approval of the 2023 8521 funding application. So I included, I don't know if everyone has it, just a little summary sheet that talks about the 8521 grant. This is something that we come to this committee every year in November and we talk about. The 8521 money has to come through an ADRC in the state of Wisconsin. And so we are the ones that complete the application. I have everything for the application complete, Austin, just so you know, except I need the minutes from today's meeting. So my intention is to go up to my office after this meeting, write the minutes, submit the application, but it is actually due, as Austin indicated, the final is due December 31st, but I like to get things done early. Every year the state lets us know how much is available for our county. This year it's $114,424. The county does have to provide a 20% match. So the levy amount that would be that match is $22,884.80. We have 2 projects as part of our 8520 grant. The first, Austin did a really good job of explaining what the doorstop service is. The second, though, I'm going to talk a little bit more about is that's our volunteer driver program. So our volunteer driver program is wonderful, but as Austin mentioned, we only have 1 volunteer driver right now. So it is difficult to, at the moment, I've gotten permission to do some advertising for new volunteer drivers, but I'm not really actively advertising the program itself because honestly, even if people applied for it, I don't think we would have the capacity that to fill in to ask this 1 driver to take on all these additional folks. We would love to have many volunteers for that program. It is meant primarily for folks who are getting to medical appointments. They have to be 60 or older or disabled. And the primary need would be going to medical appointments. And like Austin said, we're willing to go anywhere. The Minneapolis CA we've done Eau Claire is very common, even just across town, you know, to appointments within the nominee. We've done eye doctor appointments, you know, doesn't just have to be like medical, we've done dental appointments. All of those.
Rochester?
We would do Rochester,
Wow.
but we have to have a volunteer driver who's willing to do that. So,
Yeah.
you know, right now we have one gentleman and he's rather elderly himself. So he, you know, they will contact him and say, hey, can you do this? And he said no sometimes, you know, which is absolutely fine. But my main goal really is to grow the volunteer drivers we have. There are some difficulties with that. I just sat in on a transportation meeting that was held for ADRC managers last week. And they are very aware that there are huge problems with transportation services for folks who are disabled or elderly in rural areas. It's actually a big focus for them. One of the things they're actually trying to focus on for volunteer drivers in these types of programs is unfortunately a lot of their insurance companies are dropping them. Because if the person states when they're filling out their insurance paperwork that they are using their vehicle for anything other than their personal use, they're saying that they need a commercial policy. And so either they're dropping them or their rates are increasing really, really high. So there is advocacy at the state level right now, through our, what's called WAR, which is the Greater Wisconsin area on aging resource groups. They're kind of our big advocacy group, but they're working with our state legislators to try to push through some legislation that would exempt these types of volunteer drivers from that with the insurance companies. But many counties, even ones that had robust volunteer programs at one point, are having a huge drop off in drivers because people just can't afford. They don't want to be considered a commercial driver, or number one, either their insurance company is saying, well, if you continue doing this, we're just dropping you and not even offering another option, or they simply can't afford the increase in what their premiums would be. So that's really unfortunate. So they're working on that. There's also what they're telling us, although they did not give any sort of indication of when this would be available or what this would look like. They are apparently going to be potentially some grants. Again, I think it would be a similar setup to this. It would be through the ADRC, but passed through two different county transit offices for specific rural programs, rural driving programs. They did not give us any details. They said that they just recognize that this is an issue and it's something that they are working on and to kind of watch for future announcements. So that's something that I will keep my eye very, very closely on because I recognize that that's certainly an issue. And if there are any grant monies available for Dunn County, I certainly would want to apply for it. But of course, I'd have to work with Austin because all those programs, you know, are dependent on what their capacity is and what they're able to do as well. But whenever there's new programs, it's always exciting to see what we might be able to do. So I'll keep you updated if they do in fact offer some more of those. But the way the volunteer program works, the ADRC office, we screen all new drivers and we do their background checks and we give them the, you know, sorts of training they need, like on confidentiality and HIPAA and privacy and that sort of thing. Then we kind of turn them over to transit, and transit does the actual coordination of appointments. People who are needing rides for the first time as well, they also coordinate through the ADRC. So we make sure that they kind of meet the guidelines of the program and that they understand how the program works, how much in advance they need to call to try to schedule the appointment. We do request that the person pay half of the mileage expense. So right now, you know, the mileage rate is 62 or 62.5 cents per mile. We do have waivers for people who can't afford to pay that, but we do invoice folks for that amount and hope that they are able to pay if they're able to. So once we've kind of vetted that person to in the request, then we also pass that information to the Dunn County Transit. From that point forward, the person can continue to contact the Dunn County Transit and you know, make ongoing appointments. But that's how the program works. We have budgeted this past several years with the 8521 grant, saying that we were hoping that our expenses would be about 20,000, that we would have about 20,000 in revenue. It hasn't been that high the past few years with COVID. And also with just our increased number of volunteer drivers available to provide rides. But it's kind of a good standard for us to hit. It was a more regular number prior to COVID hit, and all that sort of thing. When COVID hit, obviously people were uncomfortable sharing a ride with somebody that they didn't know. The volunteer drivers at the time were uncomfortable giving rides, understandably for a period of time. So things kind of took a hit at that point. So, but it is something, again, there's going to be some advertisements. I'm even looking at doing a billboard perhaps for specifically volunteer, because we do have some potential funds in the grant money left for this year to try to really recruit those drivers. I had a gentleman call me last week, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that actually happens and that he comes through and does that. But I think for the people who have done it in the past, it's very, very gratifying because it really is such a needed service. And in general, I think folks are very, very grateful for having someone who's willing to do that. A lot of times, I think when I've looked in the past at who our volunteer drivers have been, many of them are retired people because most of the appointments are during the day, they're medical appointments. So it's not generally people who are working 40 hours a week or that sort of thing. But it's a wonderful program. We just need to expand how many drivers we have in order to make it really function better and be able to provide more service to more people. So that's a goal of mine, to try to get the word out that we really need those folks. And if anybody is thinking of somebody who might be interested, or I bet you, I wonder, someone might be saying they want to volunteer. I wonder if that would be something. It's very flexible. They can say no to whatever, like if you are only available on Mondays, that's fine. We'll take whatever we can get in terms of availability. And if someone doesn't want to drive to Rochester, doesn't want to drive to the VA, they can say no to that as well. It's very, very flexible in terms of, we will kind of take whatever a person is willing to volunteer to us for that program. Yes.
So have you thought about just doing a little, learn and put it in the senior stuff?
Yes, but that is something we have done that in the past too. I think I've wrapped it in a little bit more toward volunteers needed in several areas because we always need Meals on Wheels drivers too. So I kind of have done it, but I think I'll do some separate ones that are specifically for this program versus Meals on Wheels. So, yeah.
Just a question about the logistics of it. So if, for instance, they would be driving, if I'm starting here in Menominee and driving over to the Twin Cities, then they would be waiting with that patient until that appointment's over, however long that medical appointment is,
So
and then returning. So,
I mean, there's a significant amount of volunteer time.
Yeah.
The reimbursement is the mileage. So if somebody is at the VA and it's an all-day appointment,
right.
They're just waiting there. And doing that sort of thing. So again, it's not something that people do to make money. I don't think, that they're making a huge wage on it. It's truly, these are good people who just want to help.
Yeah,
folks.
absolutely.
Yeah. And even in Eau Claire, oftentimes I think the drivers will just wait for the person for their appointment.
The only feedback that I got from two was getting some.
Yes, and that's, it's unfortunate. And that is something, so if somebody gets paid more than $600 a year from the county to issue a 1095. So, for example, our driver we have now, he's our only driver, so I'm certain makes more than $600 a year, so he gets a 1099 for the amount above that. There is a small amount of that that can be deducted because 14.5 cents per mile is actually can be erased off of that mileage thing because that is the volunteer mileage rate. But anything above 14.5 cents that we pay is part of that 1099. So that's some folks are in situations where normally they don't even have to file taxes, but then suddenly they get a 1099 from the county and they do. So that is definitely something Austin, our current driver came on before my time, but I will make a point to make sure that anyone new was signing on really understand that piece, because I don't think all of the drivers in the past have been aware, and so then suddenly they get a 1099 and then they owe it from Dunn County and that's upsetting. If that's not something that you thought about or weren't expecting.
You're gonna get people to sign on for this when your insurance is gonna go up.
Well,
Or they have, they have a different.
and it's not every insurance company, it's a very case by case basis, so what I'm going to tell people that they should check with their insurance company about how that would be looked at. It's going to be a challenge, I don't know how else other to say it, there's a lot of, you know, because I am now aware of this insurance issue, I feel like I have to let future drivers know, I would not feel right if I didn't inform them that that's an issue. I can let them know that there's a state advocacy group that's working to change that, but as we all know, that doesn't happen overnight. And I would just suggest to them that they check with their own insurance companies how that's viewed and if they're willing to do that or not.
When this advocacy group is working to them, who approve it?
They're just working with the state legislators. I think they're kind of, yeah, exactly. And they're actually trying to get it made into a law that that insurance companies are not allowed to look at these types of volunteers in this way, in Wisconsin. But again, that will take time.
Car insurance doesn't ask me if I do something volunteer or not, just, you know, do you drive, you know, between the miles per year?
I think apparently, from what I learned, like I said, this was new to me at this meeting that I attended last week too, that this was even an issue. Apparently more and more renewals are now, they now have a question that says, do you use this vehicle to transport anyone other than yourself or your family members on a regular basis? That's the question they're adding, and that's when you are in play.
Here's this guy that can answer the question. He's gonna raise the plan, and he's going to say that the legislative agenda, what's it called?
A legislative committee.
Yeah, because Mary's the chair of that.
Ideas that we should bring, towards our, to the legislature. We have a committee.
Yeah.
Carrie, should I pass some information on to you
Yes.
about this issue?
Absolutely.
Okay, I will do
That
that.
would be,
We can, interact with Chris Corporal too.
Okay,
Well, to address everybody's concern, it's greed, it's greed. They don't want any liability, so they want to be covered. So they really are saying they don't care about the folks the people that need help, that's what they're saying. They can dress it up any way they want, but it's greed, because they don't want the liability. And then in turn, they're forcing, hey, woman that wants to help out, to be penalized. Getting back to paying taxes on it, you can't make any money doing it unless you're wealthy. Why would you do it? I mean, the volunteers probably want to break even or close or cover their gas and maybe a little bit of maintenance on their vehicle, but I mean, where's our empathy here?
thanks for that answer.
From the verbiage, that's the verbiage that it says, to me, that sounds like the insurance companies are focused more on the rideshare programs like Uber, Lyft, all that stuff. So
that would,
to
yeah.
separate out volunteer, like exclusive volunteers, but you have that as whether it's for a commercial.
That's my understanding is that, volunteers are being lumped in with the commercial things. And so the goal of the advocacy group is to try to separate that out. If you're doing it again, like with Uber or Lyft or your own personal income benefit versus you're doing it on a voluntary, that's a voluntary program. And they said something like, we may need local ADRCs to provide verification that someone absolutely would do that for whoever we needed to, whatever they need, we would provide them. So, but they're working through that process. And again, this is just something that became apparent within the last about year. It's my understanding that they've had these reports And also different counties talking about, losing many of these volunteers because they can't afford the increase in that insurance premium. So, that, yes.
Now, this would not capture Meals on Wheels delivery people, would it?
Well, I don't know, and that's also, like I said, when I heard that, you are not. The question, my understanding is the question they're saying is that, are you transporting people? So
Yep.
Meals on Wheels, you're not transporting people,
Right.
you're just delivering meals. So I really hope, and again, it really depends on how somebody answers the question. People can answer their insurance question however they
Yeah.
choose to do so, but if somebody is honestly answering the question, and they are in fact giving people rides to appointments that they're not related to or whatever the case may be on a regular basis, the honest answer would be to say yes. But then they're flagged, and then the insurance company following up and getting more details, and then making the decisions that are negatively affecting our volunteer drivers. So,
If at all possible, then the appointment's able to be scheduled in Menominee. You know, to and from Menominee location. Use the door stop bus service, then it takes less pressure on volunteer drivers.
Right.
There's a lot of people that used to use the volunteer drivers service for their Menominee appointments. But we didn't have a driver available. It's, it wouldn't be fully paid out of pocket by the individual, but, it's still very effective money.
well, and in many cases, actually, a $3 fare each way is probably less than when mileage is 62.5 cents a mile. And they're being asked to pay half of it, it might still be cheaper
Yeah.
to do that.
Absolutely.
So,
Use it.
right. But those are the two projects that we list as our, for our 8521 program. And so every year we have to come back and ask that you folks approve that. And then again, with your approval, then I can send on, the minutes that state that this motion passed and, finalize kind of the last piece of what we need for that funding application.
Yeah, just a question, I approve totally of the projects, I'm wondering, is there money coming from the 8521 to the volunteer driver program or not? It looks like it's sort of a wash, so.
It's supposed to be a wash, Suzanne, yes. So in general, it's the second part of our program. They highly recommend as part of these projects, these volunteer programs. Technically, I think we could probably move some of that 114,000 into the volunteer program. If we had to, for some strange reason, I think they would allow for that, but that's not generally the way that we operate.
My transit committee last month, we've been talking about up there for stop bus service. We took a look at the other agencies around, and this rate has not increased ever. I don't think 10 years since the commission was formed. And I just like anybody's discussion. I mean, if there's time now, it's now or next year.
Anybody comment on?
Did we discuss how much it might
We
be
were,
appropriate?
we were thinking $4.
I don't think it would surprise anybody based on just fuel costs and stuff like that, the need for an increase.
I think, Austin, if you could, kind of back up your request with some figures. And that would be very helpful, but then going forward, you know, the transit should look at as things increase and basically increasing as you go rather than waiting 5 or 10 years and it would be about maybe a dime a year or something like that. Every year, it'd be easier to swallow. Just a suggestion.
Absolutely, and that's what we've done this year with some of our subsidies. And yes, yeah, writing off 2 weeks, but also dealing with change. as well, was the other thing. So. I guess, do that. Or. For this year. But with everything kind of being on that annual basis. We're about ready to rock and roll.
Maybe in a year, you'll know more about your solar expenses too, and how. Ridership. Affected by that.
We have fallen short the past couple of years. We're looking to bring in around 45,000 in agency fares. But. Things are getting more back.
And just think about the people who use the doorstep bus and many of them are elderly people who can't really afford it. So that's something.
Supervisor Stein, what's the news about the legislative agenda?
Well,
Where we're at?
would you like to do this first?
Motion to approve the discussion. Or-
No, you got it.
Okay,
Yeah,
well then, yes, that's what I like.
So we need a motion.
And we need a motion to approve the 2023 85/21 transportation grant of $114,424 with 20% county match of the 22,884.8 cents. So is there a motion to approve that?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Wilson, is there a second? Supervisor Megan. Thank you, sir. Now, is there any more discussion on that motion? You've done a good job talking this through. Happy for that. Well then, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Well, I think that's the one thing that got done today. Anyway, we can send Tracy right to her office and start writing.
and this should be easy, I instead of, we're not gonna attach it, and then I'll be.
Okay, Gary is starting to sign.
Yeah, are you willing to listen to the 5 minutes explanation of the legislative committee? Years past, we would get together as a board, and when we started this maybe 5 years ago or so, and wanted to talk to our legislators about things that were important to the county board. Okay. Well, then, kindly loosely knit, and then we decided that we would have a committee that would be the legislative committee. That's made up of the executive committee, which is the chairman of all the departments in the county. So we'll meet once a month, and we felt that the average person is to have something that they want to bring to the board rather than have to face the whole board if it's of a legislative nature. This is a venue or an avenue for them to bring it to the board. One of those things that was brought to the board this year is the referendum that we voted on at our last election. That was brought by a group of people. We put it on the agenda. We took it to the executive board. We discussed it, and then we said, "Well, we got to mull it over for a while, and then we'll make a decision." And the board decided, the executive board decided that they take it to the whole county board. The whole county board included putting that on referendum. So it's a way for people to start, a starting point and I guess a template on how to do these things. We're going to meet with our legislatures in early or mid-January. The reason for that is that we feel that if we get them early before we get down to Madison, lobby for what we think is important. Now, because we've just started this the last couple of years, really narrowing it down. When we started, I had a bunch of ideas. Well, You know, some ideas are good, some ideas aren't gonna go anywhere. That kind of went on down, and this year, we took what we had last year and only added about 4 or 5 different items that we brought to the legislature. Now, that doesn't mean that we'll be successful, but things that are important to the county and therefore important to people should be brought to their attention, and that's all we can do, I think, is get them to listen to us. And what we try to do, from my point of view, is that we like to, well, we don't want to go in there and ask for a pony and a new car and a motorcycle. You know what I'm saying? When you go in there, you want to ask for things that you can back up with some figures and facts. So that when our approach, at least my intent would be that when the legislative committee from Dunn County or the Dunn County Board brings things to the legislature, that they're well thought out, that they have information behind them, and it makes sense to what we want to do. And therefore, there's 2 advantages to that. Number one, even if you don't get what you want, you raise the awareness that they feel they're dealing with a straightforward group. So that even though you might advocate for several things and never get anything, but if everything you send there is on the money and is backed up with information, you build your credibility in dealing with this. So that they understand that, hey, he squawks every year, you know, forget him, but yeah, this guy squawks, but he's got a lot of information here. Maybe we should pay attention to that. So that's, I think, the reason we're doing that, and hopefully we'll be successful. But we have a lot of things that have to be changed in Madison. I mean, by your legislatures there, we can only do so much. We can send our ideas along. That would be good for the county and good for our people, but you know, so it's important who you send there and how they feel about it. And I'm going to just stray for a bit here. I don't think Dunn County, or any county for that matter, but I know Dunn County doesn't have any programs that aren't good. I mean, they aren't good. We're not throwing your money away. It's just the idea that we don't have enough money to do everything. And that's what's kind of disheartening about the whole thing, because I've been on the board 10 years, 12 years now. I was on the board in the 80s. My experience, everybody that works at the county, is that they're hard workers and they want to do right by you guys. So I feel that we should. Who's going to look out for the old people? Who's going to look out for the people who can't look out for themselves? Who's going to look out for, you know, a guy still working? He might have a chance to make up an increase in the cost. Somebody on a fixed income, there's no opportunity to make up anything. So there, I'll quit campaigning. Thanks for listening.
Gary, when do the legislators, do they meet with your committee or do they meet with the whole board?
Well, they meet before the executive board meetings. Usually monthly, but we don't have a lot of business. It won't be monthly.
But you said the local legislators,
Oh, in January.
and they'll be at the full county board meeting?
We have in the past, yes,
Okay,
but we haven't had very good response on it. Those legislatures coming to listen to it.
okay.
Yeah, it'll be in mid-January. Thank you for listening. And
So for this agenda that we were talking about for the volunteer classification insurance, if we want to add that to the legislative agenda, does that have to go to the legislative committee and then does that have to be approved to the full board?
And I would say that, well, I have to talk to Ms. Corporal, our county manager, but it might be too late. Because we've had our meeting, we will have one in December. I kind of wanted to wrap things up in December so that we knew what we were going to talk about and send it on to the people in January, but certainly it won't hurt to ask and try to put that in. But I think it's an idea worthy of being passed.
And there's depending on the schedule, we could, or the committees could potentially readjust a couple of scheduling for the committee meetings in order to get.
Well, we're going to have a legislative meeting before our next executive meeting, so all that can be put on the agenda. I'll have to check with our legal counsel and our administrator to see if it all needs mustard. If it does, it certainly.
Do you know when the next meeting is? Cause it's not on the schedule.
For December,
Yeah,
it's always the second Wednesday for the executive. Legislative meeting would be the same, second Wednesday. the third Wednesday is the county board, meeting, which we're not having, so.
And Mary, at the least, I'll at least get you information
Yeah.
on what the issue is. And maybe to Larry and also to Luke, just as the,
And I think that you should contact Chris, because she's a lot more,
oh, yes,
well, she's pretty sharp,
yes.
whereas I'm Norwegian, so we don't wanna tempt fate.
I'll just include all of you in on it, so you all have that info. I have a great contact at VAR who, would probably be able to send me all kinds of info. So I will do that.
What's the issue that I never heard of? Okay.
And and I think just talking about it, and Supervisor Hagan here said, well, you know, Uber and Lyft, that's something new. That just came on here in the last few years, so naturally, you know, they're gonna react to that, and so as progress happens, we gotta, I guess, adjust and, you know, make the argument to protect ourselves.
Discussion. Anything else on legislation or, anything else that we want, Tracy, to zero in on? I think we've given her plenty to do today.
Let me say one more thing.
What do you have?
The legislative committee is designed so that you can come there and not have to get up in front of 29 people in the meeting and have maybe 10, 15, 20 other people. You're gonna come to basically a group like this, so it's not so intimidating. You know what I'm saying? So we want you to feel free. I mean, we're your representatives, so you should be able to do that. At least that's my outlook on how we would approach things, because we're here for you. We don't always give you the answer you want to hear, but certainly you deserve an answer. You know, you shouldn't feel frightened or overwhelmed because, you know, I was a village president for 10 years, and if a taxpayer come down, I know that they probably don't know the Robert's Rules of Order. But that doesn't make any difference. If they got something that's on their mind, and they're willing to come down, let's let them know. But I run a little looser meetings, but sometimes you gotta go by the book. You understand what I'm trying to say? Because, and going forward here, I'll guarantee that I'll bet money. I'd bet my shirt on it. That if your neighbors, your relatives could understand how complicated the county's interaction with every family is, really. You know, how many people here have a grandson or a granddaughter or a brother-in-law or an aunt that's on badger care or have some special needs. And if we can raise the awareness, then the idea that nobody likes taxes. Nobody likes that. But if you know what it's going for, you know, maybe that's okay. I always say people don't get to be 90 years old when they beat up. You give them the information, they'll figure it out.
Thought it was Snooze and Ludwig's.
Snooze and Ludwig's.
Now,
Thank you for listening. I'm sorry.
Have a comment to make. Before I came on the committee, I had no idea what Dunn County even really did. You know, it's mind-boggling how much you guys do. Really is. It's humbling.
You could do more. With the right legislation.
Yeah, but, and, you know, here I go again. But, the interaction of the state government and the federal government with the county government here tonight, or this afternoon, we just okayed that we're gonna spend $20-some thousand of your money, right? But what are we getting in return? $120-some thousand, right? All right. So, to me, and of course, if you have a different viewpoint, that's okay too. That's good use of our money. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I'm gonna cut $200,000 from the human services budget. Well, you could probably do that, but what are you cutting off your nose to spite your face? Is there something where we spend 60 and we get 120, somewhere, you know what I'm saying? All interrelated. It's very hard to manage all this stuff. I wish it was as easy as it seems sometimes when you're having coffee. But it's not that easy.
Well, I do want to make one comment about the bus service. I used to be the manager of the dining program up at North Campus. And that's a hike to get from North Campus to South Campus, especially in the middle of the winter. And when you have to do it a couple of times a day. But when the bus service first came on, that made the loop on campus. I was just such a naysayer. It's like, what? College students, able-bodied college students, who's gonna take a bus? They're gonna look like dorks, you know, they're just gonna walk like they always do. Was I ever wrong? I mean, the lines of people standing outside of Red Cedar to get on that bus in beautiful weather. You know, it's gorgeous spring weather and the birds are singing and the, you know, flowers are out. And there they are, waiting to get on the bus rather than walking a half mile down to South Campus.
So I'm remembering that they're getting back.
The
And they're in
backpacks,
a
though.
hurry, you know. It's not.
Right, and it does make a difference.
They're all paying for it, so we might as well.
Oh,
But
I got a question for Austin then. Years ago, we didn't have such a good relationship with the county. You know, they were bucking us on what we were charging them and they were bucking us on what they wanted to pay us. Now, how is our relationship
Yeah.
with the college now? Before I could ask for a 3% increase, they just put money.
Really?
It's very good. They have clear communication. We talk whenever there's an issue. If there's a straight survey, they go straight to my email. And students, if they have a complaint from the driver, they take care of it right away.
Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that because we were at loggerheads here a
Yeah.
few years ago. Even to the point where we didn't know what they were going to contribute or thought they
Right.
could contribute.
But
And
I
so
think the values are really kind of in alignment in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, you know.
that's
with-
good to hear. Thank you very much.
You know, they see the benefit, because the students, I think, are really, I mean, they're the ones that are pushing for the electric.
They're the
There are ways to conserve,
our bus shelter logos and stuff, so
right?
it's good.
Well, good discussion. Anything else, Tracy, or we're about to the post one meeting started out?
Okay.
Oh, we don't have, we
No,
don't have,
we kind of,
oh.
we wrapped it all together, transportation and ADRC.
okay.
Yep.
Well. Ask, for a motion to, I guess, I can just declare adjourn.
Yeah. Here we
I-
are. Hot dog.
Top dog with a lot of help. Thank you, everybody. This has been so informative. Moving forward.
Yep.